Andrea Kane with HSC 114 Medical Terminology back again, and we are still on week 4, but now we have moved on to chapter 9 and in our textbook, and that is unit 5 if you're looking at the syllabus. So let's keep going. We're talking male reproductive system now. Here are our chapter goals. They're pretty much the same as what they were for all the previous chapters, except that we're focusing on the male reproductive system. So let's go on. The male sex cell is called a spermatozoon, or a sperm cell. Let's just say sperm cell. It's so much easier than saying spermatozoon. The sperm cell, it carries its nuclear hereditary material or chromosomes in its head region, and the tail consists of a flagellum, which makes the sperm mobile. Only one spermatozoon out of 300 million released during ejaculation can fertilize a single female ovum. So in other words, only one sperm, one egg. Once that one sperm wiggles into that one egg, the egg forms, it's almost like a shield that the egg becomes impenetrable to any other sperm cell. And when you think 300 million are released and it's one-on-one, it's really quite amazing, isn't it? If more than one egg is present, though, you could have multiple fertilizations. So let's talk twins for a minute. There's such a thing as fraternal twins. Fraternal twins. That means that there were 2 eggs present and both were fertilized, each by a different sperm. If you're talking identical twins, not fraternal, but identical twins, it was 1 egg, 1 sperm, but once it got fertilized, it replicated itself. In a sense, it took an extra half cut. Each half was a full egg, full sperm, but it came from 1 egg, 1 sperm, not 2 eggs and 2 sperm. So hopefully that makes sense. And here, gee, if I waited a slide, you could have seen that. Oh man, sorry about that. Moving on. So the male reproductive system, everything is designed to produce and release billions of sperm cells throughout the man's lifetime. Billions. Notice that, billions. The hormone called testosterone is responsible for the bodily characteristics of the male. So what are the parts of the male reproductive system that we're going to be talking about in this chapter? Testis, scrotum, perineum, seminiferous tubules, epididymis, vas deferens, seminal vesicles, ejaculatory duct, urethra, prostate glands, bulbourethral glands, penis, glans penis, and prepuce, or foreskin. And this is a side view of the male reproductive system, and you can see the different parts. And it shows you the bladder so that you kind of have a way to orientate yourself along with those. And you can see the prostate gland below it. And then from there you can see the different structures. So what is the internal structure of the testis and epididymis? This shows you the arteries and veins that are inside the spermatic cord, and how the vas deferens and those arteries and veins are attached to the epididymis, which is then attached to the structure that has the seminiferous tubules in it. The testis has those. This is a better visual. It helps you see the process of how it goes through. So the sperm are formed in those seminiferous tubules. We saw those right here on the screen inside the testis, those seminiferous tubules. Then it goes down through the epididymis, through the vas deferens, to the ejaculatory duct, through the urethra, which includes the prostate gland and the Cowper glands, adding stuff to it, and then passes through the penis into the body. or leaves the body, I should say, to go outside of it. So let's talk some terms here and some meanings and definitions. And again, these are not easy to spell. I wish they were. They're not easy to pronunciate either, but do your best. Epididymis is singular, plural, epididymides. That to me looks more Greek than Latin. We talked about fraternal twins and identical twins. I did not mention Siamese twins. Siamese twins are conjoined twins. That they were identical twins, but instead of completely separating into two separate babies, they're still joined together at some part of their body. And those are called conjoined twins, and they are a type of identical twin. Parenchymal tissue. I'm just pronouncing that. Parenchymal tissue to help you with that. Circumcision, we'll talk about that probably later in this chapter, but that's removal of the foreskin. And you notice that semen is more than sperm. There's also seminal fluid that is discharged with that ejaculation. So you've got not only the sperm, but you've got the seminal fluid. And if you go back, I'm sorry to do this, but it's a good point to make. If you go back here, you see the prostate gland and Cowper glands. Those are what are producing that seminal fluid that's added to the sperm, because you notice up here the sperm are formed. Here is where, in the urethra, is where the seminal fluid is. Oops, did I go too fast? There we go. We're back to where we were. All right. And again, spermatozoon versus the plural spermatozoa. And it'll be a lot of fun to spell those two, unfortunately, so those might be good flashcard materials. Okay, so which term refers to the skin that covers the tip of the penis? And I talked about this a little bit. It's the one that is also known as the foreskin. Combining forms. Again, our equation is a combining root plus a combining vowel equals a combining form. And we have lots here. Notice for testis, testicle, you have three different ones. I mean, they're very, very similar. It's like you add on an I and an ID. But still, just make sure that you pay attention to that. Now we have some suffixes. So let's talk about pathologic conditions. What are some things that can happen with the testicles? You could have, or something that's related to the testicles. The first one is a hydrocele. That's a sac of fluid in the scrotum. That's not supposed to be there. If you look at the other two pictures, you can see there's no fluid around the testicle. And so when you have that, it's called a hydrocele, and it just needs to be removed, or drained, I should say. All right, the next one is testicular torsion, and this is an extremely, extremely, extremely painful condition for a male. Sometimes it happens as a sports injury. It sometimes happens as a lifting injury if they lift way too much weight and they're not for whatever reason, their body reacts this way. It's a twisted spermatic cord. Notice in the pictures 1 and 3 how the cord comes down and the testicle faces forward. In number 2, the cord comes down, but it's somehow gotten twisted and the testicle faces backwards. And that's called testicular torsion, extremely painful and must be taken care of right away. Unfortunately, guys that get this sometimes have to have the testicle removed because the blood has been cut off from that twisting, and it's essentially killed the testicle. So that sometimes happens. A varicocele is where you get dilated spermatic veins. For whatever reason, these veins, they dilate, they get big, they stretch, and that causes problems, and that has to be addressed. Prostate gland gets carcinoma. Ever heard of prostate cancer? Happens to a lot of guys who are older in life. It can happen to guys as young as late 40s, and it can happen to guys as late as their 90s. It just depends. So again, you see the cancer, the abnormal cells. Prostate cancer is very different than BPH, benign prostatic hypertrophy or hyperplasia. This is where these cells, they grow. They're not cancerous, but they grow, and they start making this area in the urethra, between the bladder and the urethra, narrow. So it makes it very hard for the man to be able to urinate. So it's really important that if someone has benign prostatic hypertrophy or hyperplasia, that it is somehow addressed, because once this happens and the urine's backed up into the bladder, then you have a whole lot of kidney problems and other issues. Whereas with prostate cancer, that's actually malignant and it's going into damage, and prostate cancer tends to metastasize to lungs and brain, just so you know. Hypospadias, that is where it's a surgical repair that involves taking a portion of the foreskin and wrapping it around a catheter and suturing it to the farthest part of the urethra and bringing it to the end of the penis. For some reason, it's not coming to the end of the penis like it's supposed to. And so what they have to do is take off some of this area around the edge and use it to help them get it to the end of the penis where it's supposed to be. There are sexually transmitted infections, chlamydia, gonorrhea, herpes, HPV, syphilis. And most of those, if not all of those, can be passed from a male to a female, or from a female to a male, or from male to male, or from female to female, depending on what is happening. Lab tests, PSA, that's to measure your prostate hormone level. If it's really high, you need to be concerned about prostate cancer. And then there's also semen analysis, looking at maybe someone is having trouble, maybe a couple is having trouble with infertility, and they're both being tested to see what is happening. Are their structures sound? Is there some kind of issue? And semen analysis can help on the guy's side to see if maybe there's a low sperm count or some other issue. Oh, I gave this to you, didn't I? What does the PSA test stand for? Oh my. It's an antigen. I said hormone, but it's antigen, so I'll give you that one. All right, so what is a transurethral resection of the prostate? These are very common procedures called TURPs, and they use a scope, a rectoscope, or resectoscope, sorry, resectoscope, goes in and they're trying to remove the prostate. And again, they do that most of the time for, we talked about the hypertrophy, the prostate hypertrophy, where it grows and it squeezes the urethra and keeps the urine from flowing easily from the bladder through the urethra. And so they can go in and do this. So a TURP is a very common procedure that is done. It's a transurethral resection of the prostate. Vasectomy. This is a man's method of birth control, a surgical method. Just as women can have their tubes tied, their fallopian tubes tied or cut off or fulgurated, a man can choose to have a vasectomy, where they take his vas deferens and they cut it off or block it. It's a lot less invasive than having a woman's fallopian tubes tied or cut or fulgurated. But here, this is the man's version. Which term means removal of the prostate? This is an easy one. Easy, easy, easy. So what are some abbreviations that we see in this area? BPH is a very common one, benign prostatic hyperplasia. I always taught it was hypertrophy, but you can use hyperplasia. That's fine. DRE, digital rectal examination, that is for men, for their prostate, to see if it is beyond the normal size and maybe there's prostate cancer that you're worried about or some kind of other problem with the prostate. A doctor has to do a digital rectal exam. And the rest of these are pretty self-explanatory. PSA, the PSA test I talked about, prostate-specific antigen that measures, I want to say hormone level, but antigen level of what the prostate is secreting to see if they might be potentially having prostate cancer. STIs, STDs, sexually transmitted infections or diseases. And the rest of them, TURP is the most common one that I've seen used. So we're back to our combining forms again, and our happy equation is a combining root plus a combining vowel equals a combining form. And this gives you some more. Some of these we went over before, some are a little bit different. Which term means no sperm or semen are produced? Might have to look this one up. Check your book. All right, that's it for the male reproductive system. Thankfully, that was short and sweet. So, those three chapters, chapter 7, 8, and 9, are for week 4. They are units 3, 4, and 5 in your syllabus. And I hope you're having a great week. I hope you continue to have a great week and stay cool. It seems like we are in the midst of summer. And I will be back next time to talk to you about the cardiovascular and respiratory systems. Exciting stuff. Take care.